but I have thought about whether I have actually picked all these things to be unique as rebellion against the fact that I'm the Bermuda
I
archetype.
feel that.
I've had a friend tell me, "Oh, maybe you do have a four fix because you're trying hard to be all special." And I took that to heart. I'm like, "Oh no, that sounds horrible. Please no."
Oh
um,
God.
but I am finding some enjoyment or sort of a challenge in like reconciliating all these things, especially when I'm listening to like satanic lyrics and while also trying to be boringly Abrahamic.
The big hormone enneagram.
Let me lay it on the line. I got a little freakiness inside. Let you know that the man has got to deal with it.
Hi, it's John here. I'm a sexual self-pres 4-5, 4-5-8 tri-type.
Hi, David here. I'm a self-pres sexual 9 with 1, 974 tri-type.
Hey, it's Emeka. I'm an 8 wing 7 sexual type with the 854 type.
Hey, it's Nancy. I'm a self-pres social 3, wing 4, and 369 tri-type.
Welcome to Big Hormone Enneagram. I'm John. I'm a 4. We're here with Emeka, 8, and Nancy, 3. David is nining out somewhere. And we're here with our very special guest, Farah, a 6, who the name Big Hormone Enneagram is basically a tribute to her because she's a scientist who works with hormones.
That's right. Sometimes.
So last time y'all talked about 6, and I want to continue that discussion with the attachment types because especially on our group, there's been a lot of posting and discussion about what attachment types are, and that there's a lot of the population is an attachment type or has a tri-type with all 3 attachment types 9, 3, and 6. That there is a very particular mechanism, psychological mechanism, not one specific one, but there's a way that they are related to the outside world that I think is really useful, not just for triangle types, not just for on the inner triangle, the enneagram, but for everybody. And I know that and Nancy, you're a 396, right?
I think 369, but yeah.
369, yeah. And Farah, you also have that tri-type.
Yes, I am. I'm a 693.
What are things that you all feel that people either don't understand or be useful for somebody to understand about that combination of types?
I can start based on an experience today, where I just met up with a friend and I was talking to her about my struggles, some of my familial struggles or things like that, and she would say something like, "Why don't you just do what you want to do?" And to many people, doing what I want is never what I really want because what I want is sort of connected to a network of connected to the network of people in my life. So it's never really a decision based on what I want. And sometimes what I want is not even a concrete thing because it's all intertwined with the will or the preferences of others whose lives are also intertwined with my life. So yeah, it's not a simple thing of knowing what I want or knowing what has to be done. Anyways.
So does that complicate your sense of who I am? Like like you said, it's never what I want, but does that make it hard to distinguish what is you versus something that you've internalized?
Maybe not so much with me, but maybe with others with a maybe different combination of the 3 attachment types, but it's not identity, but it's rather related to goals or expectations of self or optimal paths in life. But when it comes to identity, which I personally perceive to be different from those things, I feel like I do have a clear sense of who I am. It's more about like my influence or my influence on the world around me or the actions that I take.
So, kind of zooming out. So, in terms of attachment, what we're talking about is object relations and how object relations is this theory that one of the dominant like theories or models of how the personality forms, and the personality forms in relationship to our parents. As kids, part of having a personality is having a self concept. It's also having an other concept or an object image. And then there is an emotional affect carried between subject and object. And so there are three dominant affect styles, meaning three dominant patterns that you can have this um, affect or quality of emotions. It's more than emotions, but this psychological dynamic between subject and object, and those are attachment, frustration, and rejection. And Don Riso and Russ Hudson correlated the 1, 4, and 7 with frustration is the dominant affect that is underlying their personality. 2, 5, and 8 is rejection. And so they're self rejecting and offering something else in place of themselves. And then attachment for 9, 3, and 6. And um, in any of those triads, you have one type, in this case 9, which is um, it hasn't the affect is for both parental figures, so it's not necessarily mom and dad literally, but the parental roles of nurturing or protecting. So the 9 personality is attached to things that offer protection and guidance, and also things that offer nurturing and holding and love. The 3 personality is attached to things that offer mirroring like things that would sort of substitute for the mothering function. So um, things that would it's about holding and love and like somebody seeing me. So a lot of the 3 personality is motivated to get that seeing, to get that holding and recognition of my identity, and I want to be mirrored like a mother mirrors its child. But as an adult, I project that onto my circumstances and other people. And then the 6 is attached to the protective function or the fathering function. And so part of what's going on there is there's a feeling that I didn't quite get it's like I didn't internalize the protecting function. So it's like instead of being able to move forward with confidence by my own sovereignty and autonomy and decision and knowing, I look for structures and guidance and making plans and things that are reliable to organize and structure my way of moving through the world. And so attachment in all these cases means there's something psychologically speaking that I feel like I haven't internalized and I'm going for from the environment. And so it can create um, kind of different struggles with knowing who I am and knowing what I want and knowing how to distinguish between living a life that gets me the protecting or the nurturing that I'm looking for, and how to have a life that gets me that, and also is personally fulfilling for who I am apart from these psychological dynamics. Does this make sense?
Yeah. So as a 3, I see that come through a lot. I think most of what I do is kind of like reaching for that being held and being seen kind of thing. So that's where kind of not knowing what I want at any given moment comes from. I think because I can kind of do a 180 at any moment about like what I really want because it's kind of based off of what's going to get me the most like I see you, you're great at this, and because of that, here is my love.
I guess in general that's true for threes, but how does 6, 9? Is that like making you like a super 3? Is that you're more externally oriented 3 in terms of people's expectations? in your experience compared to other threes?
I would say it's more. I have less of a like northern star kind of thing. I
Mm.
feel like a lot of threes that are like threes, like stereotypical threes, have this thing that they're always working towards, and it's
Mm.
very like driven and obvious, and they have a path.
Right.
Whereas with me, there's never a clear path because it could be anything all the time, and I never know where to go or what to do because I don't know what I like or what I'd be good at, or it's like constant chaos in my head all the time.
So is it like the 6 and 9 makes you like the most adaptable, malleable three?
Yeah, I'd say that's a good way of putting it. Yeah. I'd say it feels more of like I'm kind of being washed away in a river with currents. So it's
Easily like more
easily
influenced by
influenced. Yeah.
more is easily influenced. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. My best friend OD is the same tri-type, and he's also a social type, social sexual,
Mhm.
which without self-pres there's a lot of ungroundedness.
Mm.
And he's highly influenced by what's going on in the social realm and how people are viewing him.
Mhm.
And I mean, sixes are kind of already externally oriented to some sort of support system or whatever they feel will bring them a sense of I think what we talked about last time was a sense of certainty that something I can count on. And in the social realm, like social sexual is kind of like looking for, I want to be cool. I want to be recognized for doing interesting stuff in the social realm. I want to be a star. And well, like there's a conflict between how I want to present myself in an authentic way versus what people will recognize as cool at that time. And what I've noticed from the years that we've been friends is that he struggles with the conflict of trying to express himself as an artist versus what he knows people will recognize currently. That's always changing. Like maybe it's podcasts right now, maybe it's comedians who talk about who do storytelling jokes or whatever is like cool and hot right now. He's like, maybe I should do that instead of, because people like that. So I should just do what people like. Um, so I feel like I think that's kind of what I see as one of the struggles of 369, but also the gift of 369 is incredibly adaptable, like which makes him incredibly likable. Like people meet him and it feels like he can connect with anybody. Is that something you relate to? Both of you guys, if is that something you guys relate to? Is that you feel like you can connect with more people because of your adaptability?
I certainly feel that way, and I've had people um like deem me friendlier than I would have deemed myself in that position, or like, oh yeah, yeah, you're really friendly, or I thought you were really friendly then, even though I wasn't really intending to be so. um yeah, so I guess, yeah, I guess you are right with that theme.
Yeah, I feel like I can relate to pretty much anyone, especially like with 3 being my main um type. Like I can just chameleon into whatever they want. But then my self-pres self kind of gets in my head a little bit more than I think a social type would. So,
Go
Just
for
to
it.
add to that, I also feel that having social being a SOSP, it does give me a certain like element of elitism with my interactions, or at least internally. Like I might be friendly, but deep deep down I'm like, you're not worthy of this on the long term, or this is just an act, but I don't really like you.
We
yeah, I
know,
get that.
Farah.
Yeah, we know. Yeah, it's not a secret.
Oops.
But how do you reconcile that? Because I find that very interesting. On one hand, there's this sort of it sounds like what you're saying is a certain permeability, and on the other hand, it's a sort of you can't touch me.
I do have this. It happen. It's a frequent occurrence where I would like almost spill too much or be too friendly and immediately have this actual feeling of recoil, or like, oh, I was too friendly then, or I should have withheld more.
Like I
So
gave myself over too much.
yes, it's very conscious too. I didn't think it would be that way. Or like I was too friendly to this person, I would regret it for later, like for days later. So
Mm.
I've had similar encounters in the past.
You know, part of my experience, and I think Emeka shares this as our tri-type, is that there is it's like an excessively differentiated series of types. And so what y'all are describing in terms of being influenced by stuff is like very foreign to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm interested in and there's a kind of my personality has a certain pride in having resisting outside influences, and being social blind and contributes that as well. But so I'm curious about so it doesn't really make sense to me. Like I know I can articulate what the triangle types are going through in terms of the theory, but in terms of the direct experience and how they experience their sense of self, and this ambiguity between malleability and taking in impressions, and also what you just described of kind of the elitism or something is it's I'm wondering if like what is feeling on one hand protected and reserved and elite, and on the other hand is seemingly easily willing to get on board with other people's personality agendas.
At least with me, the whole thing with other people's agenda might be more of a subconscious process, while the more conscious process is the one that involves like separation. Another thing is, I remember it's either you or David who once mentioned that sixes and nines do have this ego invested in feeling feeling different or being unique, or unique isms. So like, as opposed to a four who where the process is much more natural and it's not rehearsed and it's not something they're thinking of. Let me do this so I look special.
Like an intentional crafting of their distinction is what you're saying?
Yes. So I know, like, after I've been involved in this discussion, I have noticed that this is something that I've been doing. So like, as a younger person, I'd be like, oh yeah, I don't listen to mainstream music. I don't really do that. Or like, even my the way I dress, I'd be like, oh no, I dress I wear timeless stuff. I don't follow the current trend or something of that sort. But I think it's all a resistance towards more internal processes where I am actually absorbing and being on board with a lot of things that people around me are doing.
Mm.
So I guess both things are, there is a resistance and there is a going with that are happening simultaneously, but in different arenas or sides of my processes or personalities.
So I'll
Very
say this
interesting.
because because I have this 854-639 relationship with my best friend, and so it's a very contrasting personality. So like what you're saying, that it's on the subconscious level that sixes or people of this tri-type are going along, because no one is going to openly admit to just being a follower of other people's influences. Most people identify as being authentic and distinct to themselves, and for the most part, like, people have that as a feature of their personality. But what I see that's going on with sixes, nines, and threes is that even though there's a drive to be unique and to be themselves, that they're automatically absorbing other people's perspectives, and it's almost like I have to constantly push away and find my own voice,
Mm-hmm.
versus maybe the types that are more of the separatists, like the 8 5s and 4s, are automatically assuming separation. So I don't think it's happening on a conscious level where anyone of 639 will admit to being it's on a deeper level where it's like I feel myself going along, or maybe some time passes and they've already adopted another viewpoint that they thought was their own, but um, was actually someone else's, and they've lost their own voice. And so trying to find where am I actually is a really hard thing, even though they feel like I am actually following my own voice.
Yeah, that's why I'm finding it hard to imagine your friend who's a 369 or like that archetype being a creative person or being an artist. Of course, I'm not saying that all these types are dull and they can't create or anything, but I'm saying as someone who has all three types together, I've tried creating in the past, and I would be conscious of I would do something. I'd be like, nope, this is literally that sounds like that song, or okay, no, this now looks like this artist. Or maybe I don't know. I don't know if this is a terrible example, but I'm finding I feel like I am feeling his struggle in a way.
Yeah, I can give you a peek into his, at least getting to know him. He's a comedian, and so as a 6 coming up as a comedian, he was trying to figure out like what is a good comedian. So you go and look at the great comedians, and to try to figure out, well, I don't, if I guess Dave Chappelle's a good comedian, so if I can do comedy like Dave Chappelle, then maybe I'll be a good comedian. It's like, well, I have to actually find my own voice. Well, what is my own voice? Well, you know, good comedians do this, this, and this. And so he spends years trying to build up those skills. So it's this constant struggle of trying to figure out like what the external world says is excellent versus what do I actually want to express as a comedian. And it seems like every over every often he struggles with, he has a crisis of kind of like, what the fuck am I doing, kind of like needing to orient to something that shows that I'm heading on the right path.
Yeah, I feel that when I'm painting a lot. It's like like every couple of seconds kind of push and pull. And it's like a practice I do, and I only do it when I'm prepared to deal with that bullshit because I'll be painting and like a minute in, I'm like, oh, this doesn't look like true abstract expressionism because this
Mm.
one brushstroke looks like it's too abstract, and it's not going to speak to these people the way I want it to speak to these people. And then I'm like, okay. And then I have to go back. So what I've started doing is I started just painting, and then I just leave the painting on the street. And then, so that
Interesting.
way, like either it gets thrown away or someone picks it up, or like, but I put it somewhere where I won't see it. And so I'm just like, here you go. And that way I can't be tied to the result because I'm
Nice.
constantly tied to the result.
Oh
That's
wow.
that's very interesting because like so I'm as y'all are speaking, I feel like like all the personalities are all related to one another. And so it's not like if you're this, you're like unable to access other thing. But I think what it sounds like is that my tri-type is over, like as Emeka was speaking to, it's like there's just a baseline assumption of separation. And so my attention is always going to like it's going away from external influences. And I always feel like with the people I know who are triangle types that there's often this way that they have like there's tons of very creative, very original people of all the triangle types and all tri-type, blah 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 blah. But that their attention can sometimes go to what you're speaking to, Nancy, of like, well, this doesn't look like that thing, and in so doing, they kind of like don't trust their own process or inspiration or something like that. But I can see how like friends of mine have done something creative, and then there's a part in the creative process where maybe it's like an insecurity, a doubt, or a not knowing if I'm going the right direction inside, and I need to kind of like check in with something that's more familiar, and then I start comparing it to that thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it can kind of take my own creativity off course. And what I think is interesting, also, given that a lot of this discussion of triangle or attachment types that we've been doing in our group comes from seeing what's going on where a lot of people who are not fours think they're fours. And I think that can look like envy, what I'm describing. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying?
Yeah. It
Yes.
can look like, because it feels like envy.
Right.
because like I see other painters or other like poets, like I really want to write poetry, but I really don't know how. And so I'll like read into it, but then I start writing poetry like someone else, and then it's not me, and then it doesn't sound good, and it's just like, and so I constantly am envying other artists who can just sit down and create. I actually like I have a system with all of my friends or most of my friends where I'm like, don't give me your opinion unless I ask for it. Specifically, blatantly ask for it. Because I get really mad when people give me their opinion and I'm not asking for it because whether I want to or not, I will take it in as reality.
Mm.
Like it took me so long to get my first tattoo because everybody has an opinion on tattoos. Like I would be like, "Oh yeah, I'm getting this." Literally, it started when I was like 18. I was like, "Yep, I'm getting this tattoo," and it was specifically this tattoo I have on my arm. And like so many people were like, "Don't get that, you'll regret it." And I'm like, "I know I'm not going to regret it," but then it took me 6 years to get the fucking tattoo. And so like one friend told me like right before I got this tattoo, she was like, "Oh, don't get it on your arm, then you can't cover it." And I was like, like mentally I was like, "I will shut your mouth forcibly."
Yeah, man.
Because I can't handle other people's opinions.
I mean, other people's opinions are like 10% of what I think about, and then I'm like, it's like very minimal. It's like, okay, that's your opinion, but I got to figure this out myself. It's
Yeah.
like
God, I wish I was like that.
it's like I just pre-delete, and then I'm like, yeah, maybe they had a point, but maybe not, probably not. This kind of a thing. Well, I have a question for Farah. So, like, I don't know, like, feel free to not share anything about yourself because I know that you like to be secretive. But you are triangle type, and we're talking about all the kind of influences that triangle types can absorb, especially a triple triangle type. And you are a particularly unusual collection of influences. From the point, do you and we can delete whatever you want to delete from the conversation, whatever. But scientist, like a devout Muslim woman, and super into metal, and then super into like memes and humor. And I don't know,
Dope.
what else I might be missing in there, but you've got all these different very unusual, like you don't see those combinations of interests together.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm curious, like I think one of the stereotypes that can easily develop about the triangle types is that they can be like everybody else, or that they can be kind of like the common person. And there's like archetypally, I think there is something there, but there's a lot of uniqueness in everybody. And I'm curious, like how you understand your own experience of incorporating all these very different influences, and as a type that takes in influences, but they're all very like seemingly at odds, and enneagram is a big part of that too. And it's so I'm curious, do you have anything about that?
I have again, because I am maybe too painfully self-aware, but I have thought about whether I have actually picked all these things to be unique as rebellion against the fact that I'm the Bermuda
I
archetype.
feel that.
I've had a friend tell me, "Oh, maybe you do have a four fix because you're trying hard to be all special." And I took that to heart. I'm like, "Oh no, that sounds horrible. Please no."
Oh
um,
God.
but I am finding some enjoyment or sort of a challenge in like reconciliating all these things, especially when I'm listening to like satanic lyrics, and while also trying to be boringly Abrahamic. It is so I do feel like a pioneer in some sense. Of course, I'm not, but it's just like this fun feeling of trying to find the common grounds between all these things, or how these things don't go against each other. Maybe it's a nine fix, trying to like find peace and harmony between like ideologies that are at odds. Also things like like social justice and socialism
Uh,
and Islam. Maybe you guys have always heard me ramble about this, but things like, but no, Islam is actually pretty socialist if you think about it. So is
Yeah.
metal. Metal is also socialist. And then yeah, I'm like trying to reconcile these like drastically different groups or communities.
Well, I think that's interesting, and I think that like this is not meant to flatter you, but it's like I think you have maturity in your spirituality that you can be as devout as you are, and then listen to satanic music because you're not like getting. It's like a lot of people who are religious, no matter whatever their thing is, can't listen to or participate in art that like draws from aesthetics that are intentionally antagonistic towards those religions. And so I don't know. It's like I mean, I could see where somebody could because it's interesting this sort of vertical view of Enneagram from the point of view of like levels of health or however you want to describe it of maturity or whatever. But um, I can see how maybe at like a lower level on the spiral dynamics or whatever, blah blah blah, that somebody who's taking in all those influences could really struggle and try to keep them separate in a way that they like start reacting like, oh, metal music is terrible, it's unholy or whatever, and or like whatever, but like getting into some kind of weird division, whereas I see you going through a unification, or not necessarily unification, but like holding them all together in a way that keeps their distinction too. Does that make sense?
Maybe. Yeah. I did want to write a like I have this in my notes, but it kind of relates to this. I do feel like perhaps some sixes, maybe social sixes too, start having a like a reaction against the binary to sort of relieve anxiety. So maybe like the whole like I'm not gonna say movement because movement is a wrong word. I'd say the new awareness about like how gender is binary.
Hmm.
We should all be non-binary, or gender is a strict construct. Everything should be more fluid. So this could be rather than like a nine expression, it could be more of a six terrified of being like, well, I have to be this way or the other because this goes against this. So let's try and find common grounds between all these things so that I don't feel anxious about whether I'm on the right path or not.
I was gonna say that it's a thing that I notice a lot with sixes where they're trying to straddle very opposite worlds and trying to be the holding space, almost in a nine-ish kind of way. But it has an edge to it, like we talked about on the last call, that a lot of the punk movement, the metal movement, has this really reactive, edgy six tone to it. Um, and a lot of the rebellion of six is not wanting to be pinned down to any one category. So as soon as a six is invested in one thing, it's almost like I need to I want to have the diversity where I can go into another category that's maybe
Mm-hmm.
oppositional to the one that I'm already in.
Yes, so that I don't feel like you can stereotype me now, or you can put me in a box because I'm a I don't know, I'm a walking contradiction or something.
Yes. Yes. Contradiction is essential to sixness.
So Nancy and Farah, like, what helps you get in touch with yourself from all these influences? And like, not to say necessarily that there is a self that is separate from influences, but like, I can imagine from the point of view of three, from the point of view of six, and from the point of view of nine, the way that all those types, like, we've talked in other episodes or whatever, and on the group and stuff, we talked about how sensitive nines are because they're the sensitive type in a way because they're absorbing so much from the environment, and you know I can imagine, as you were describing earlier, Nancy, like going for all these things, but also being very malleable and kind of reversing directions based on whatever comes up in a way that blows your wind in a certain way. And so, what helps you like get in touch with yourself, or whatever that sense of self is that you feel landed in something that feels like your own?
So I think the first way I can kind of tell the difference of like, oh, am I just doing this because other people want me to do it, or am I doing it because like I want to do it? Um, there's a little bit of a different energy for me when
Mhm.
it comes to doing something to be like a good three, or to be like, successful, or etc. Um, it's more of like you drank too much coffee energy. Like it's not really like a true you love this energy.
Mm.
It's a pushing. It's like
Mhm.
I'm pushing this boulder up a hill, and it's my duty to do so. But it doesn't feel good.
Mhm.
And for a long time, like I thought that was motivation, but really it's just like self-torture. um, but, but I think what's helped me the most, because sometimes I can't always tell the difference in my energy levels. So I think what's helped me the most is just not putting too much meaning behind anything I do. Kind of letting go of like, oh, everything I do is important. It's like, well, nothing I do is that important. So, I'm going to work this job, and I'm just going to be here for however long I'm going to be here, and I'm going to do what I want in the evenings. And
So just being humble,
yeah,
sounds like.
yeah, just sort of letting things be and letting things happen at their own time, and knowing that, it's okay to be normal and slightly boring. And just living in that space for a while is what's helped.
With me, physical separation helps in a way. Being away from family members for a bit, or just away from everyone. But I feel that being a compliant type too, or a super ego type, all these inputs from all the factors around me becomes sort of gets internalized into becoming the moral code that I should live by.
Mm.
Sometimes I don't know if this is good way to put it, so that even when sometimes I'm doing something I'm enjoying, there's always this lingering feeling of guilt about whether I should be doing this.
It sounds like what you're saying is that there's always this sort of super ego message that is making you, I don't know if the right word is question what you're doing, or if what you're doing is it sounds like what you're saying is if what you're questioning with what you're doing is maybe useful or good or something like that. Is that what you're saying?
That's true.
So is it hard for you to enjoy things?
Yes. It's hard for me to relax because when I'm relaxing, means that something is wrong, or I'm neglecting something, or I'm not thinking about something. Um, so that's why I don't feel it's better to keep busy. I think a lot of people with this attachment type, well, or sorry, the attachment types, especially in combo when they're all three of them together,
Hmm.
they tend to be like busy busy bees, or
Hmm.
workaholics, who are trying to just work themselves away from all these thoughts.
What would happen in what does your imagination think would happen if you were to relax? Like, what does your superego say is going to happen?
I don't deserve rest. There's probably things I could use my time to do a lot of other things. uh I don't know, Nancy's laughing, so maybe she does relate.
Yeah, I totally relate to that. There's a large, well, so for me it doesn't feel as much like guilt. It's like I don't know, it almost feels like a 7-ish thing, where it's like, oh, if I'm not going to enjoy the day, what's the point of having a free day? I might as well go to work. So it's like hard for me to to like just take a day and sit, because I'm not going to have as much fun, but in reality I'm too tired to go do anything else. So
Wow.
it's very annoying.
So, but does it feel like there's some real important thing you got to do? Like what I'm hearing from the 6 and from the 3 point of view is like a little bit of like there's some important shit to get done, and then from like Farah's point of view, there's like some shit will happen if I don't get stuff done.
Oh, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, it does. That's why I've tried to kind of let go of like everything I do being important, because it feels like everything I do is important. And then if everything I do is important, I have to constantly be doing it, right? So
It's also being aware of how much change, like sometimes like change you can make, like, oh, I have like 5 hours free today. Think of all the things I could do with these 5 hours. I could make a difference in the world. I could join all these things, but I'm not doing any of this. Oh God, I'm a lazy, terrible person. Work harder.
Yeah,
There's
you're
always
wasting all this fucking time on a podcast when you could be, cleaning
Oh,
the streets.
oh boy. No, I am sort of making a difference in this podcast. I like to think. No.
You'd like to think.
Yeah.
I think she does
Oh.
think.
All 2 listeners. Our incredible audience of 10 people
Oh,
top.
God.
One of
I
them being
have-
my mother.
Yeah.
Oh God, I have another point I wanted to mention. So I know we're discussing attachment types in general, but this more of relates to 6, and I wanted to bring it up last episode or last call. The whole thing with 6s and punishment, or I feel like punishment. I feel like punishment.
You talking about whips?
Oh yeah, some chains.
Oh yeah, I'm talking
Candle
in
wax.
the actual sense and in more performative senses.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What do you mean performative? That's interesting.
No, performative as in like, you know what I mean.
Tied
No,
from
I
the
don't.
What do you
ceiling,
mean?
I'm not
like-
alluding. I'm not insinuating that you're saying something sexual.
Oh,
These cretins.
I
we
thought you
are.
were.
I don't.
Like I don't understand what performative punishment means.
I'm talking about punishment in like both in the Catholic sense. I need to confess. I'm gonna self-flagellate, but
Mm.
then there's also the more like, yeah, I guess in more like you said it. Things like, I don't know, BDSM or stuff.
Oh, okay.
Okay, you were. All right.
So, but yeah,
Big
like, I
hormone
feel like-
energy.
I feel like the flavor is a bit different from like other super ego types, because when you get like with 6s, like punishment is sort of like the universe telling you, yes, you are in the right way, or especially I see a lot of 6s who like kind of snitch on themselves when they do something wrong, or they would say like, okay, I did this, please tell me I'm stupid. I've seen multiple 6s do that. I've probably done it myself a couple of times. It's more of like having control over the consequences by welcoming them. Here,
Interesting.
I did this wrong, give me my punishment, give me the consequences right now, so now I'm control. It's not like me sitting in the corner waiting for when it comes.
Yeah, I do feel like 6s have a thing for punishment. Like I don't understand. Like I see a lot of 6s. Like my brother's a 6. I have a brother and a sister who are 6s, and especially my brother. Like, I don't know. He just has this sense where if something goes wrong or is misunderstood, there has to be a consequence. He'd be offended by something, and there'd be this need to lash out as a punishment, or at least that's how I took it. But it was like there needs to be a consequence of something bad that has happened.
I think it goes back to like controlling the chaos. Like maybe if we punish people, chaos, this wouldn't happen again. Everything would be in order.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's got like a ritual quality to it to me. Like a lot of rituals
that's
are to
also-
kind of control chaos in a sense.
Yeah, all these like religions, world religions, and the Enneagram type that they kind of symbolize, or sorry, the vice versa, and like 6 in Catholicism, all about like self-punishment and penance, or that's the word, or like confession, like I'm snitching on myself when I do something bad.
Yeah.
Again, as control. But then that's the thing, it could also be like a sense of, I guess, in things like BDSM, it's more of like complete loss of agency might bring the control freaks, like the six control freak, got some sort of relief. As in, like, okay,
True. Yeah.
I'm letting go. I do not want to control anything. Yeah. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it absolutely does. I feel like sixes are always looking for an external, you could say, system or system of certainty, and it could be a bunch of different things. It could be ideology, it could be a religion, it could be a person, it could be a job, and submitting to it, feeling like, I trust this thing enough to give myself over to it, and if I am wrong and if I fuck up, I want to be punished because this thing that I'm trusting has a framework that is dependable, which means that there are rights and there are wrongs. And that's where you get morality, and or maybe like a job where it's like I'm being, reviewed, and my boss is saying that I didn't do a good enough job. Sixes, I feel, take that really seriously, of needing some kind of framework of dependability or certainty of some kind, and something that they want to submit themselves to. And so I've noticed that a lot of times when you see these movements where some self-assured leader reaches some kind of position, it's usually sixes that are at the front lines of um, giving themselves over to a movement or a cause that they really believe in, and
Yes, that's another
submitting
thing.
themselves to, it could be a cult, something that I'm going to defend, I'm going to stand up for, but this thing that I'm defending and standing up for has rules that I'm willing to defend, and if I fuck up, I want to be punished because things have to line up for a six. In order for me to feel safe,
Mhm.
I need to trust that this thing has boundaries that are very clear.
Yeah, that's why I feel like sixes might be susceptible to over like confident people, because there's that dialogue where, or like internal dialogue where you're like, this person is confident, I'm not confident, because I'm not sure of what's going on, but they seem confident, so they must be sure of the truth. So it's a terrible thing, and yeah, people need to be more aware of it, more self-aware, I guess.
This is how
Um,
Hitler's happened.
Well,
And Trump's.